I'm now going to give you an overview of the skeleton for the next programming assignment. This is assignment 1B. If you go to the CS892 GitHub account, you'll take a look in the assignments directory in assignments 1B, and you'll see the various code here. You can go ahead and synchronize that with Git. If you take a look at the index.html file, you'll see the description of the assignment. This assignment is going to build on the assignment from part 1A and will add additional capabilities for semaphores and for some other classes as well. As before, this is split up into a couple different directories. We have a main, which is where the actual source code is that you need to fill in, and there are a couple of tests, a unit test and an Android integration test. If you come down here and take a look at the program description, this is very similar to the previous assignment. In fact, what you'll do is you'll take your implementation from part A and you'll copy it into the Palantir presenter and being runnable classes, so you can fill that in. It's probably not a bad idea to wait until you get feedback from me on your first solution before you go ahead and copy over the solution to the second solution for part B. And then the main thing you need to do is finish implementing the classes in the model layer. And you'll see that you'll be using a Java semaphore and a hash map and synchronized statements to mediate concurrent access to the Palantir resources and keep track of which Palantir are currently free and which ones are in use. And we'll cover this stuff in class, of course, but if you want to get a head start on that, you can take a look at the videos here and here for descriptions about Java semaphores and synchronized statements. So everybody has to do this part of the assignment. Then there's also some additional stuff using Java 8, and we'll be covering that in class as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the project. This is the project view for the assignment. Some things are essentially unchanged. We have the view layer, which is exactly the same as it was before. We have the utils layer, which is the same as it was before. We have the presenter layer, which is what you will have filled in for part 1A. And then the part you'll have to fill in is the model layer. And you can see here that there's a couple of different classes, some of which we provide for you, some of which you have to implement. So basically here is the Palantir Manager class. This is what you have to fill in. I'll give you a little bit of the skeleton of this stuff. This is different from 1A. If you recall, in version 1A for the assignment, you didn't have to do anything here, and we basically just returned an entry by using Java 8 to go ahead and search and find whether there was anything that was available or not. And that required you to put some looping code in the Palantir presenter portion, the presenter layer, in the being runnable portion of the presenter layer, that had to keep looping until you were able to get a Palantir. In this approach, we're going to use a semaphore here, and a semaphore is basically an atomic counter that goes up and down, being acquired and released, and if there's no semaphore permits available, then the code blocks until there is one available. So that's what we're going to do to be able to do blocking operations, which will simplify the being runnable code a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second. The other thing we have here is a hash map called the Palantir map. This is not synchronized by its very nature, so you'll have to provide the synchronization mechanisms in order to synchronize it. That's part of the assignment, of course. Down here is the constructor, which explains what you need to do. You need to make a new hash map, and you need to be able to iterate through the list of Palantir in the map and initialize each key with the value of, initialize each value in each key to the value true to indicate that it's available. This is a Boolean, as you can see here, that indicates whether something's true or false. And then you also, of course, initialize the semaphore, and you need to make sure it's a fair implementation, and fairness is described in the videos that I talked about earlier. Then down here, you'll have to implement the acquire method. The acquire will acquire the semaphore uninterruptibly, and then it'll iterate through the map in a thread-safe manner using synchronized statements, which you can also learn about if you watch the videos or come to class. And then you'll go ahead and find the first key whose value is true, which indicates it's available for use. And then you'll replace this key with false. And you have to make sure you do this with the lock held, otherwise you can have race conditions and corruption of state and so on. And if you find something, or once you find something, then you go ahead and return the Palantir that was found back as the return value to the client after marking it as being in use as opposed to being available. The next method you have to implement is the release method, which is going to go ahead and atomically, in other words, using synchronized statements, put the true value back into the hash map for the Palantiri key in a synchronized and thread-safe manner, and then it'll release the semaphore if all went well. So that's basically the code that you'll have to write. You'll also have to make one little tweak over here to the being runnable code. There's a method called gaze into Palantir. And what you'll do here, this is a little different from what you did in assignment 1A. In assignment 1A, you had to put a loop because this was a non-blocking call. Because we now are using a semaphore in our Palantiri manager, you don't have to worry about looping because it'll block if there's no Palantiri available. And so you can do a blocking call, and that'll kind of clean up this code and simplify it quite a bit. So that's basically what there is for the implementation. Go ahead and clone it. Once you've got it all cloned, then you can go ahead, of course, and implement the to-do statements, and also go ahead and implement the various, or test out the various unit tests and integration tests to see whether or not your code is working. So that's basically a quick summary of assignment 1B.